Prices are up. Your groceries cost more. Your car costs more. Your phone costs more. Your rent costs more. And if you've been paying attention to the news, everyone keeps saying the same word: tariffs. Politicians blame them, other politicians defend them, economists argue about them constantly. But almost nobody actually explains what a tariff is, how it works, and, most importantly, why it ends up coming out of your wallet and not someone else's. So let's fix that. Let's make this simple. A tariff is a tax. That's really it. That's the core of it. Specifically, a tariff is a tax on goods coming into a country from somewhere else, imported goods. When a company ships sneakers from Vietnam to the United States, and those sneakers arrive at a US port, the government charges a fee. That fee, calculated as a percentage of the value of the goods, is the tariff. The importing company pays it before the goods can enter the country. Then the goods move on to stores, warehouses, distributors. So far, so simple. A tax at the border. Got it. Here's where it starts to get more interesting. Who actually pays for that tax? Politicians love to say it's the foreign country, that China is paying, that Vietnam is paying, that the tariff is a punishment for the other side. This is, to put it gently, not really how it works. Let's trace the money. A company in China manufactures a pair of shoes. They sell those shoes to an American importer, let's call it a wholesale company, for $50 a pair. The importer brings those shoes into the US. At the border, there's a 25% tariff. So the importer pays $12.50 per pair in tax before those shoes can move. Now the importer has paid $62.50 for shoes that used to cost them $50. Are they going to absorb that extra $12.50 and just accept a smaller profit? Maybe a little, but not all of it. They pass some to the retailer. The retailer, let's say it's a shoe store, now pays more for the shoes than they used to. They're not going to eat the cost either. They raise the shelf price. You walk in. You want sneakers. They now cost $80 instead of $65. The Chinese factory still got their $50. The importer passed on most of the cost. The retailer passed on the rest. And you, at the end of the chain, paid the tariff. That's how it works in practice. The foreign producer doesn't feel most of it. The American consumer does. Now let's talk about the scale of what's happening right now, because this is not theoretical. As of 2026, the US has tariffs of up to 145% on many categories of goods from China. 145%. Think about what that means. A product that cost $100 to import from China now costs $245 once it crosses the US border. Before it hits a warehouse, before it's shipped to a store, before any retail markup. The math compounds fast. Electronics, clothing, furniture, car parts, industrial equipment, all heavily affected. And these aren't luxury items. These are things that show up in every home in America. Let me give you a concrete number. A new car that would have cost you $35,000 a few years ago might now cost $42,000, $45,000, or more, depending on where its parts are made and how the tariffs hit the supply chain. Not because the car got better, because the math changed at the border. This is why inflation has been so stubborn. It's not just one thing going up. It's hundreds of things, each getting a little more expensive all at once. Okay, here's the part that might surprise you. Most American consumers assume that when the government announces a tariff, there's some negotiation happening, some back and forth, some economic chess being played. And there is. But the immediate effect, the price increase, hits you before any of that plays out. Trade negotiations take months, sometimes years. Supply chain adjustments take time. Factories don't move overnight. But your next shopping trip happens this week. So there's always this lag where consumers feel the pain immediately, and any potential benefits, if they come at all, arrive much, much later. So why does any government do this? Because there is a real argument for tariffs. It's not crazy, it's just complicated. Here's the logic. For decades, American factories competed against countries with much lower labor costs. China, Vietnam, Mexico. Wages there were a fraction of U.S. wages. American manufacturers couldn't compete on price, so they shut down. Jobs moved overseas. The economic term for this is deindustrialization. And in large parts of the U.S., the Midwest, Appalachia, the Rust Belt, it was devastating. Communities built around steel mills, auto plants, and textile factories watched those industries collapse over 30 years. The argument for tariffs is, if we make imports expensive enough, domestic manufacturing becomes competitive again. If a Chinese TV costs $400 because of tariffs, but an American-made TV costs $350, people buy American. The workers keep their jobs. That's the theory. And sometimes it works, partially. The steel industry has benefited from tariff protection. Some semiconductor manufacturing is coming back to the US. Solar panel production is expanding domestically. But here's the trade-off that never makes the headline. Those factory jobs returning, when they do, take years to materialize. The construction of a new semiconductor fab takes 3 to 5 years from announcement to production. A steel mill doesn't open overnight. But the price increase? That's immediate. So the person buying groceries, electronics, and clothes is subsidizing the hope of future factory jobs. Whether that trade is worth it depends entirely on whether you think those jobs are coming back and how long you're willing to wait. Economists genuinely disagree on this. It's one of the most contested questions in the field. There's one more thing worth knowing about tariffs, something most explainers skip. Retaliation. When the US puts tariffs on another country's goods, that country almost always retaliates. They put tariffs on American goods. American farmers have felt this acutely. When the US hit Chinese goods with tariffs, China responded by putting tariffs on American soybeans, pork, and wheat. American farmers who had built their businesses on Chinese demand suddenly found that market cut off. China went to Brazil for soybeans instead. Brazil was thrilled. American farmers were not. So tariffs don't just raise prices for consumers. They can close off export markets for American producers. The costs get spread in ways that aren't always obvious. A tariff isn't a simple win or a simple loss. It's a complicated intervention with winners, losers, and a lot of side effects that take years to fully show up. Let me also quickly address something you've probably heard. The idea that tariffs will bring manufacturing back and fix everything. Maybe, over a very long time horizon. But there's a reason manufacturing left in the first place. It wasn't just labor costs. It was also automation, logistics infrastructure, supply chain ecosystems, and capital investment that built up in other countries over decades. You can't fully reverse that with a tariff. You can nudge it. You can create incentives. But the idea that factories will flood back quickly is probably more optimistic than realistic. The long game might work, but it's a very long game. And you're paying for it right now. Quick recap. Let's pull it all together. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. Despite what politicians say, consumers, not foreign countries, absorb most of the cost through higher prices. Right now, the US has some of the highest tariffs in decades, up to 145% on Chinese goods. And those tariffs are a meaningful contributor to why prices are elevated. The argument for tariffs is protecting domestic jobs and industries. The argument against is that consumers pay more immediately, and benefits arrive slowly, if at all. And retaliation is real. American exporters pay a price too when other countries hit back. That's tariffs, made simple. Next video, we're going into the full trade war. Why the US and China keep escalating against each other. What both sides are actually trying to win, and what happens when two of the largest economies on the planet decide to stop playing nice. Subscribe if you want that one. It gets interesting.